Number 20.
You already have a business and you're about to launch your blog so that you can sell your product. Unfortunately, here is where a business mind can be a bad thing. Most people believe that to have a successful business blog promoting a product, they have to stay strictly on the topic. If all you're doing is shamelessly promoting your product, then who is going to want to read the latest thing you're writing about? Instead, you need to give some useful or entertaining information away for free so that people have a reason to keep coming back. Only by doing this can you create an interested audience that you will then be able to sell to. So, the best way to be successful with a business blog is to write about things that your audience will be interested in.
Number 21.
Our language helps to reveal our deeper assumptions. Think of these revealing phrases. When we accomplish something important, we say it took blood, sweat, and tears. We say important achievements are hard-earned. We recommend a hard day's work, when day's work would be enough. When we talk of easy money, we are implying it was obtained through illegal or questionable means. We use the phrase, "That's easy for you to say," as a criticism, usually when we are seeking to invalidate someone's opinion. It's like we all automatically accept that the right way is, inevitably, the harder one. In my experience, this is hardly ever questioned. What would happen if you do challenge the sacred cow? We don't even pause to consider that something important and valuable could be made easy. What if the biggest thing keeping us from doing what matters is the false assumption that it has to take huge effort?
Number 22.
The old saying is that, knowledge is power, but when it comes to scary, threatening news, research suggests the exact opposite. Frightening news can actually rob people of their inner sense of control, making them less likely to take care of themselves and other people. Public health research shows that when the news presents health-related information in a pessimistic way, people are actually less likely to take steps to protect themselves from illness as a result. A news article that's intended to warn people about increasing cancer rates, for example, can result in fewer people choosing to get screened for the disease because they're so terrified of what they might find. This is also true for issues such as climate change. When a news story is all doom and gloom, people feel depressed and become less interested in taking small, personal steps to fight ecological collapse.
Number 23.
The most remarkable and unbelievable consequence of melting ice and rising seas is that together they are a kind of time machine, so real that they are altering the duration of our day. It works like this. As the glaciers melt and the seas rise, gravity forces more water toward the equator. This changes the shape of the Earth ever so slightly, making it fatter around the middle, which in turn slows the rotation of the planet similarly to the way a ballet dancer slows her spin by spreading out her arms. The slowdown isn't much, just a few thousandths of a second each year, but like the barely noticeable jump of rising seas every year, it adds up. When dinosaurs lived on the Earth, a day lasted only about 23 hours.
Number 24.
Have you ever brought up an idea or suggestion to someone and heard them immediately say, "No, that won't work"? You may have thought, she didn't even give it a chance. How do they know it won't work? When you are right about something, you close off the possibility of another viewpoint or opportunity. Being right about something means that it is the way it is, period. You may be correct. Your particular way of seeing it may be true with the facts. However, considering the other option or the other person's point of view can be beneficial. If you see their side, you will see something new or, at worst, Learn something about how the other person looks at life. Why would you think everyone sees and experiences life the way you do? Besides how boring that would be, it would eliminate all new opportunities, ideas, invention, and creativity.
Number 29.
You may have seen headlines in the news about some of the things machines powered by artificial intelligence can do. However, if you were to consider all the tasks that AI-powered machines could actually perform, it would be quite mind-blowing. One of the key features of artificial intelligence is that it enables machines to learn new things, rather than requiring programming specific to new tasks. Therefore, the core difference between computers of the future and those of the past is that future computers will be able to learn and self-improve. In the near future, smart virtual assistants will know more about you than your closest friends and family members do. Can you imagine how that might change our lives? These kinds of changes are exactly why it is so important to recognize the implications that new technologies will have for our world.
Number 30.
Plant growth is controlled by a group of hormones called auxins found at the tips of stems and roots of plants. Auxins produced at the tips of stems tend to accumulate on the side of the stem that is in the shade. Accordingly, the auxins stimulate growth on the shaded side of the plant. Therefore, the shaded side grows faster than the side facing the sunlight. This phenomenon causes the stem to bend and appear to be growing towards the light. Auxins have the opposite effect on the roots of plants. Auxins in the tips of roots tend to limit growth. If a root is horizontal in the soil, the auxins will accumulate on the lower side and interfere with its development. Therefore, the lower side of the root will grow slower than the upper side. This will, in turn, cause the root to bend downwards, with the tip of the root growing in that direction.
Number 31.
To demonstrate how best to defeat the habit of delaying, Dan Ariely, a professor of psychology and behavioral economics, performed an experiment on students in 3 of his classes at MIT. He assigned all classes 3 reports over the course of the semester. The first class had to choose 3 due dates for themselves, up to and including the last day of class. The second had no deadlines. All 3 papers just had to be submitted by the last day of class. In his third class, he gave students 3 set deadlines over the course of the semester. At the end of the semester, he found that students with set deadlines received the best grades. The students with no deadlines had the worst, and those who could choose their own deadlines fell somewhere in the middle. Ariely concludes that restricting freedom, whether by the professor or by students who recognize their own tendencies to delay things, improves self-control and performance.
Number 32.
The best way in which innovation changes our lives is by enabling people to work for each other. The main theme of human history is that we become steadily more specialized in what we produce, and steadily more diversified in what we consume. We move away from unstable self-sufficiency to safer mutual interdependence. By concentrating on serving other people's needs for 40 hours a week, which we call a job, you can spend the other 72 hours, not counting 56 hours in bed, relying on the services provided to you by other people. Innovation has made it possible to work for a fraction of a second in order to be able to afford to turn on an electric lamp for an hour, providing the quantity of light that would have required a whole day's work if you had to make it yourself by collecting and refining sesame oil or lamb fat to burn in a simple lamp, as much of humanity did in the not-so-distant past.
Number 33.
If you've ever made a poor choice, you might be interested in learning how to break that habit. One great way to trick your brain into doing so is to sign a Ulysses contract. The name of this life tip comes from the Greek myth about Ulysses, a captain whose ship sailed past the island of the Sirens, a tribe of dangerous women who lured victims to their death with their irresistible songs. Knowing that he would otherwise be unable to resist, Ulysses instructed his crew to stuff their ears with cotton and tie him to the ship's mast to prevent him from turning their ship towards the Sirens. It worked for him, and you can do the same thing by locking yourself out of your temptations. For example, if you want to stay off your cell phone and concentrate on your work, delete the apps that distract you or ask a friend to change your password. Number 34. Our homes aren't just ecosystems, they're unique ones, hosting species that are adapted to indoor environments and pushing evolution in new directions. Indoor microbes, insects, and rats have all evolved the ability to survive our chemical attacks, developing resistance to antibacterials, insecticides, and poisons. German cockroaches are known to have developed a distaste for glucose, which is commonly used as bait in roach traps. Some indoor insects, which have fewer opportunities to feed than their outdoor counterparts, seem to have developed the ability to survive when food is limited. Dunn and other ecologists have suggested that as the planet becomes more developed and more urban, more species will evolve the traits they need to thrive indoors. Over a long enough time period, indoor living could drive our evolution, too. Perhaps my indoorsy self represents the future of humanity.
Number 35.
Developing a personal engagement with poetry brings a number of benefits to you as an individual, in both a personal and a professional capacity. Writing poetry has been shown to have physical and mental benefits, with expressive writing found to improve immune system and lung function, diminish psychological distress, and enhance relationships. Poetry has long been used to aid different mental health needs, develop empathy, and reconsider our relationship with both natural and built environments. Poetry is also an incredibly effective way of actively targeting the cognitive development period, improving your productivity and scientific creativity in the process. In short, poetry has a lot to offer, if you give it the opportunity to do so.
Number 36.
Things are changing. It has been reported that 42% of jobs in Canada are at risk, and 62% of jobs in America will be in danger due to advances in automation. You might say that the numbers seem a bit unrealistic, but the threat is real. One fast food franchise has a robot that can flip a burger in 10 seconds. It is just a simple task, but the robot could replace an entire crew. Highly skilled jobs are also at risk. A supercomputer, for instance, can suggest available treatments for specific illnesses in an automated way, drawing on the body of medical research and data on diseases. However, what's difficult to automate is the ability to creatively solve problems. Whereas workers in doing roles can be replaced by robots, the role of creatively solving problems is more dependent on an irreplaceable individual.
Number 37.
Each beech tree grows in a particular location, and soil conditions can vary greatly in just a few yards. The soil can have a great deal of water or almost no water. It can be full of nutrients or not. Accordingly, each tree grows more quickly or more slowly and produces more or less sugar, and thus you would expect every tree to be photosynthesizing at a different rate. However, the rate is the same. Whether they are thick or thin, all the trees of the same species are using light to produce the same amount of sugar per leaf. Some trees have plenty of sugar and some have less, but the trees equalize this difference between them by transferring sugar. This is taking place underground through the roots. Whoever has an abundance of sugar hands some over. Whoever is running short gets help. Their network acts as a system to make sure that no trees fall too far behind.
Number 38.
Should we use language to understand mind or mind to understand language? Analytic philosophy historically assumes that language is basic and that mind would make sense if proper use of language was appreciated. Modern cognitive science, however, rightly judges that language is just one aspect of mind of great importance in human beings but not fundamental to all kinds of thinking. Countless species of animals manage to navigate the world, solve problems, and learn without using language, through brain mechanisms that are largely preserved in the minds of humans. There is no reason to assume that language is fundamental to mental operations. Nevertheless, language is enormously important in human life and contributes largely to our ability to cooperate with each other in dealing with the world. Our species Homo sapiens has been astonishingly successful, which depended in part on language, first as an effective contributor to collaborative problem-solving and much later, as collective memory through written records.
Number 39.
Take 2 glasses of water.
Put a little bit of orange juice into one and a little bit of lemon juice into the other.
What you have are essentially 2 glasses of water but with a completely different chemical makeup. If we take the glass containing orange juice and heat it, we will still have 2 different glasses of water with different chemical makeups, but now they will also have different temperatures. If we could magically remove the glasses, we would find the 2 water bodies would not mix well.
Perhaps they would mix a little where they met.
However, they would remain separate because of their different chemical makeups and temperatures. The warmer water would float on the surface of the cold water because of its lighter weight. In the ocean we have bodies of water that differ in temperature and salt content. For this reason, they do not mix.
Number 40.
One of the most powerful tools to find meaning in our lives is reflective journaling, thinking back on and writing about what has happened to us. In the 1990s, Stanford University researchers asked undergraduate students on spring break to journal about their most important personal values and their daily activities. Others were asked to write about only the good things that happened to them in the day. 3 weeks later, the students who had written about their values were happier, healthier, and more confident about their ability to handle stress than the ones who had only focused on the good stuff. By reflecting on how their daily activities supported their values, students had gained a new perspective on those activities and choices. Little stresses and hassles were now demonstrations of their values in action. Suddenly, their lives were full of meaningful activities. And all they had to do was reflect and write about it, positively reframing their experiences with their personal values. Number 41 to 42. Mike May lost his sight at the age of 3. Because he had spent the majority of his life adapting to being blind, and even cultivating a skiing career in this state, his other senses compensated by growing stronger. However, when his sight was restored through a surgery in his 40s, his entire perception of reality was disrupted. Instead of being thrilled that he could see now, as he'd expected, his brain was so overloaded with new visual stimuli that the world became a frightening and overwhelming place. After he'd learned to know his family through touch and smell, he found that he couldn't recognize his children with his eyes, and this left him puzzled.
Skiing also became a lot harder as he struggled to adapt to the visual stimulation.
This confusion occurred because his brain hadn't yet learned to see. Though we often tend to assume our eyes function as video cameras which relay information to our brain, advances in neuroscientific research have proven that this is actually not the case. Instead, sight is a collaborative effort between our eyes and our brains, and the way we process visual reality depends on the way these two communicate. If communication between our eyes and our brains is disturbed, our perception of reality is altered accordingly. And because other areas of May's brain had adapted to process information primarily through his other senses, the process of learning how to see was more difficult than he'd anticipated.